The ring on the table. Daniel pushed the back door open and stopped with his shoulder against the frame when he saw the single gold band resting on the kitchen table. Panic rose in his throat, his fingers went numb, and he sat on the nearest chair without meaning to. The small folded note next to the ring lay like an accusation. Within those first breaths he understood the central problem. Maya was gone, and the ring was not an accident. His panic made him fumble the phone, then the panic turned into sharp, slow guilt as he read the handwriting on the note. 3 simple words that were not an apology. He ran his hand over the table's surface, found the place where the placemat had been moved, and then pushed the drawer open with both palms. The placemat slid up and a yellowed sheet fell free, a list written in Maya's precise small letters. The list named dates and single-sentence memories. When she had waited alone for him after the job interview, the Saturday he missed because the meeting ran late, the night the pipes burst and she called him twice. Each line mapped a small letting down, not dramatic crimes but a steady tally of being unseen. Daniel kept thinking, I should have known. That thought didn't comfort him. He felt the ledger as a line-by-line indictment of habits he thought harmless. Daniel's panic shifted to a cramped anger at himself and then to a dull, stubborn resolve. He dialed Maya and then immediately hung up. He dialed again. The phone rang 3 times and went to voicemail. He left a clipped message. Maya, come home, we can talk. His name twice. He thought of the couch he had slept on last week and the missed anniversary breakfast he had blamed on traffic. The house smelled of dish soap and coffee grounds. Those domestic details struck him with more force than any speech. His hands moved without thinking. He straightened a chair, picked up the lid of the sugar jar, smoothed a dish towel over a chair back, trying to make the room look unchanged, as if things could be set right by tiredness. Outside, Mrs. Patel's light came on across the lawn and she stood at her gate with slippers and a cardigan. She called his name as he came out the front door, and Daniel saw the small suitcase Maya had left by the porch and the way she paused with her hand on the handle. Daniel called out, Maya, wait. He heard his voice break and tried to hide the break by stepping forward. He had to know what she would do next. Maya looked at the suitcase and then at Daniel without answering out loud. Mrs. Patel, I thought she was going to the train. Daniel, she needed to be seen. Daniel's chest tightened. He walked up the porch steps as if the motion could make her stop. Maya touched the wedding band once with her fingertip and tapped it on the table in a small, precise gesture before she closed the door behind her. The tap sounded larger to Daniel than any shout. He reached the porch. Maya, please, said. She didn't turn around. The first emotion shift. Daniel moved from panic to guilt to pleading. He stepped off the porch and followed her down the street. On the pavement he called again. Maya, come back! I was late. Her back did not move. A neighbor's kerosene lamp threw a thin pool of light and the evening smelled of laundry and damp leaves. Mrs. Patel watched them from her walkway and said, heard you fighting yesterday. Daniel's throat closed. What did I do? The question landed abruptly. He hadn't expected a neighbor to answer for him. Maya paused at the corner and then kept walking toward the bus stop. She had folded her coat collar up against the chill. She carried her small suitcase as if she had chosen not to look back. Daniel caught up out of breath. He placed his hand on her elbow before she could step onto the curb. Maya, tell me where you were going, he said. He used her full name because his voice needed the tether of it. Maya pulled away with quiet motion. Daniel, you promised you would be home for dinner on Saturday. You promised you would call that morning. You missed both. Her voice was flat and not dramatic. That flatness hit him harder than an outburst would have. Daniel, I can fix this. I will be better, I promise. He had said similar promises before. She looked at him like she was checking if the person in front of her had changed enough to mean them. Mark, Daniel's colleague and friend, pulled his car onto the curb when he saw them arguing from the passenger seat. He climbed out and said, Daniel, get in. We need to talk. He had a bluntness that usually smoothed Daniel's edges. Mark had a direct way of cutting through Daniel's excuses. Daniel hesitated, torn between following Maya to the station and getting inside Mark's car to avoid saying something he couldn't take back. The second emotion shift arrived then. The pleading loosened into fear, fear that he would find Maya gone and fear that he had allowed this to arrive. At the driveway, Daniel and Mark argued for a few short, sharp sentences that turned like chisels. Maya left Daniel. She left the ring. Mark rubbed his jaw. Daniel, you've been checked out for months. You come home later and later. You say you'll fix things and then you don't. You're not listening. I'm listening now. Daniel snapped. You say that, but do you mean it? Mark answered. Do the thing you say you mean. Stop saying it. The exchange had 5 quick lines. They did not solve anything. That night, Daniel went back inside because he could not bear to stand on the street while Maya disappeared into the station crowd. He opened drawers, turned over cushions. The house offered up the ledger and the small folded note and the ring, but nothing else. He found an envelope taped under the placemat with a list titled Missed Mornings. The entries were precise. Dates, times, what she had done alone because he had been late or absent. He read them aloud into the dim kitchen like a man confirming facts rather than making a case to himself. Each line snapped a different part of his complacency. The ledger moved him from shame to an urgent need to act. Daniel drove to the office the next morning and sat at his desk with the ledger in his briefcase. His boss Ivan found him in the corridor and said, Daniel, we need those files. I'm giving you till noon. The ultimatum was flat and scheduled. Corporate time did not pause for domestic collapse. Daniel's whole body felt split between the work that paid his bills and the woman who had packed a suitcase. Even repeated, "You can't keep missing deadlines, Daniel." Even, "I need a day." Even stared, "You used to be reliable, Daniel." That remark pushed Daniel against an immediate test, to choose the job or to solve the wound at home. He chose wrong at first. He would balance both. He sat in his office while his hand shook and checked commute times to the suburban station. He realized how many meetings had been scheduled, how many small absences built into his calendar like notches. As the hours moved, the ledger felt heavier, a weight that did not belong to paper. He left the office with Mark's reluctant blessing and ran to the station. At the suburban platform, the midday light made the rails glint. He saw Maya near the edge of the platform, hands wrapped around the handle of her suitcase. She had not seen him at first. A shadow at the far end of the bench watched them. A man in a pale coat stood with his back toward the ticket booth. Daniel hurried forward and stopped a few feet from her. "Maya, Daniel, come home. We can fix this." She did not turn to look at him immediately. Her jaw moved like someone checking a list. "You missed my meeting with the landlord," she said. "You missed 3 Saturdays with Mrs. Powell's kids because you were on calls. You missed the night our pipes burst and I let the water run so the floor would not warp. That's what you missed." The sentence came out steady and specific. Daniel tasted each omitted moment like a bite he had never been given. The platform filled with a low noise of trains and a child laughing somewhere on the far end. The man in the pale coat shifted his weight and slid a folded square of paper across the bench toward Daniel. Daniel's fingers closed on the paper as if it burned. He opened it. The single line inside hit him with cold accuracy. "You did not show up when she sat with her father at the hospital." The paper named a day Daniel had not known about because she had never told him then, and because he had assumed she would mention it when she returned. To Daniel it was a new wound. Not only had he missed small things, he had missed crucial ones she had carried alone. That line changed how he saw everything. This was the plot twist. The ledger had been a tally. The folded paper revealed a gap he had not imagined, a private event she had borne without telling him, because she had thought he would be there. Daniel's certainty that neglect was limited to domestic inconveniences fell away. He felt dread now, not only for losing her but for having been absent when she needed presence. He could not blame lack of intention anymore. He had actual proof of absence. He turned to the man in the pale coat, who had Daniel. The man's face was neither threatening nor familiar. There was calm in his posture. He answered, "I was a friend once. I told her what you couldn't." That line made the platform small and raw. Daniel lunged forward. "What did you tell her?" The man's voice did not rise. "I told her to leave if no one noticed." Maya folded the ring into her palm and looked at Daniel with very clear eyes. "You knew you were late," she said. "You knew you chose work when I needed you. I stopped telling you because every time I did, you promised and then you were gone again." Her sentences were short. They landed like small stones that made the puddles of the past ripple. Daniel tried to say, "Maya, I don't remember that hospital." He it plainly. She answered, "You weren't there." A small crowd had gathered at the platform now, commuters, a woman with a stroller, a teenager with headphones. The man in the pale coat folded his hands. Mark stepped up behind Daniel and touched his shoulder without speaking. "Daniel, Mark, this is bigger than you thought." The word bigger was concrete. Mark meant the ledger, the hospital line, the pattern. Daniel Maya to tell him what had happened in the hospital. Her voice did not tremble. She described a night when her father had a high fever and she sat in the fluorescent corridor for hours. She waited for a call she expected at any time. "I texted you. You never replied." She listed the times. The time she called, 2 a.m. The morning she needed someone to take a form to the clinic. The afternoon he promised to come home and then cancelled to take a client out. Each memory was a precise event. The accumulation of these events, not general sadness, had shaped her choice. Daniel's reaction moved from disbelief to raw articulation. He spoke faster. "Maya, I thought I was doing it for us. I was trying to give us more later." Maya's mouth tightened. "Later is not on the schedule when you are sitting alone in an emergency room corridor." The crowd was quiet enough that a terminal announcement started and stopped. Daniel tried again. "Tell me what you need. Tell me how to fix this." Maya looked at him and did something small. She put the ring back on the table in front of them both. Her hand lingered on the wood as if counting the grain. The motion settled the argument into a new place. She had chosen space. The man in the pale coat touched Daniel's arm. "You have a ledger in your kitchen," he said. "She kept a list. This is not only forgetting, this is a record." Daniel felt the ledger confirm the paper's line and then widen it. "Why did you slide me that note?" The man answered, "Because sometimes people wake up better when they hold the proof." His voice was level. He did not explain who he was beyond that. The platform announcement named a delayed service. A train that would take Maya farther away than she had planned was not scheduled for another hour. The delay became an external event that forced motion. Maya looked at the tracks and then back at Daniel. She spoke without theatrics. "I need you to understand that small things matter." Daniel tried to speak, but the words piled up and then fell apart. He had a moment where he imagined turning this into a speech of promises and plans, dates, dinners, alarms set to call, but the ledger and the paper had removed the appeal of plans that were only words. There was a mid-chapter cliffhanger when Maya stood up, lifted the suitcase, and took a step toward the stairs. "Daniel, Maya, please." He reached and missed. She turned her face briefly toward him and said, "If you can't keep the mornings, don't ask me to keep the ring." Then she stepped away. That sentence, direct final, left Daniel with nothing but a decision to make. He watched her go onto the platform and then into the procession of commuters. The man in the pale coat folded his hands and began to leave. Daniel felt the third emotion shift then. Grief settled into a raw, urgent determination. He grabbed his coat and rushed after them. He spoke aloud once to Mark. "I will not let this be the end. I will follow." Mark then followed. "Daniel, don't make excuses." At the station exit, Daniel found nothing but the steady motion of people. He ran 2 streets over and paused to catch his breath. He thought of the ledger in his kitchen again and of the small sentences that lined it. He thought of the hospital corridor she had named. He felt failure in his limbs and a fierce need to prove he could change by action, not words. He returned to the bench on the platform where he had opened the paper. The folded note had one more thing inside that he had missed in his first glance. A short sentence written under the single line, "I left because I thought I needed to be seen." That sentence sat there like an instruction. Daniel folded it back and put it into his pocket. He felt a cold clarity sharpen around his edges. He had not been present in the ways that mattered. That clarity pushed him forward and also left a hollow that would not be filled by a single apology. He stayed on the bench until the late train came and then followed the last few people. The station lights hummed. He heard the echo of his own shoes. He thought of calling his boss, of turning in his resignation, of changing schedules. He thought of small things he could do tomorrow: show up at a clinic appointment, pick up groceries, bring sandwiches on a Saturday. But he also knew that lists did not undo the ledger. He needed to prove presence over time. When the platform thinned, Daniel folded the last scrap of paper, slid it into his watch pocket and rose. He had a raw promise in his throat that was not clean enough for a speech. He tucked his hands into his coat pockets and climbed the stairs toward the city. He glanced once at the tracks and then kept walking. The station doors closed behind him as if sealing a decision. By the end of that day, Daniel had changed his calendar, cancelled meetings, and sat in his car for 10 minutes before driving to the hospital address Maya had given, an address he had never known. He arrived at the reception desk, asked for the ward, and when the nurse raised an eyebrow at his lack of detail, he said, "I'm Maya's husband. I'm here to listen." The nurse did not roll her eyes. She handed him a visitor sticker, and the action felt like entering a new, deliberate practice. Showing up. The chapter ends with Daniel on the station stairs, the folded note in his pocket, and the city lights before him. He had not fixed anything. He had not yet been forgiven. But he had the ledger and the paper that named what he had missed. He had an immediate route to do one thing differently. Go to the ward, find the person who had helped Maya, and start by listening. He climbed the stairs with his watch heavy on his wrist and a stirring in his chest that was all motion, no platitude. He pushed the station door open and stepped into the evening. The doorway decision. Daniel bolts out of the back door and runs into the street just as Maya crosses the lawn with a small suitcase. Betrayal sits like a hard stone in Maya's chest, and it has been shaping her steps for months. That betrayal is the reason she is leaving now. The neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, freezes on her stoop and lifts a hand as if to stop him. "Maya!" Daniel calls, voice raw, and the name arrives as a demand and a plea. Maya keeps walking. She does not pick up speed. Her palm stays loose on the suitcase handle. She has rehearsed this moment without any acting in front of a mirror. Inside every small dismissal, unfinished dinners, ignored anniversaries, the ring on the table, added weight until something inside her quit pretending. In the first 5 minutes of the day, the ring had become a fact he could not undo. Now he runs after her, and his running is a first honest action. "Stop, Maya," Daniel says again when he reaches the edge of the lawn. He has a hand out and his watch is half hidden under the sleeve of a faded sweater. "Maya, we can talk." "Please." Maya turns slowly and looks at him. She shows no trembling. Her azure eyes rest on his face and then on his hands. She says, "You left it there, Daniel. You left it there," and walked away. Daniel's chest tightens. He remembers where he found the ring on the kitchen table. He remembers sitting down on a chair as if his knees refused to work. He remembers the folded note like a small accusation. He tries to speak, but his words come out thin. I didn't know. I didn't see." "You didn't see," Maya repeats. "You didn't see me for years. You didn't see the milk left at the back of the fridge, the birthday card gone unread, the way I learned to laugh alone in this house." Mrs. Alvarez comes down her steps and says, "Daniel, you need to let her go if she wants it." Her voice is steady. She knows which fights are for the street and which belong at the kitchen table where things are quieter and more dangerous. Daniel turns to the neighbor, then back to Maya. "Come on, we can fix this. I'll change my schedule. Maya holds up a hand. "No patch-ups, Daniel. Not words. Not promises when your phone buzzes every 30 minutes. Not late apologies that arrive after dinner is cold." Her sentences are short. She speaks in small, precise pieces because long speeches would open the floodgates she does not want today. Daniel steps closer. "I work hard for us. I provide." "You re-talking like that's nothing." His voice hardens and then softens in the same breath. He runs a hand over his face. "Maya, please." She does not argue. She does not shout. She puts the suitcase down, taps the small gold band against the table in her mind, and names the cost aloud. "I stopped believing I mattered." That sentence changes something in Daniel. He sees the memory, the ring on the table, and something like panic rises, then splits into two tracks, denial and an urgent need to act. He dials his sister Emma with shaking fingers while Maya steps onto the sidewalk and waits as if watching a clock. In Emma's small hallway, Daniel's voice is different. It is quick, clipped, as if words compound the shape of meaning into the space between two people. Emma, Maya's leaving. She put the ring on the table. She left. Do you know where she is? He speaks Daniel's name like a man naming an emergency. Emma's reply is a slow, careful refusal. I don't know exactly where she is. Daniel, she left without yelling. She looks determined. I don't think you're interrupting a crisis. You can fix it once. Emma folds a paper on the kitchen table and slides it toward him. She left a note and some arrangements. I won't give up her location without her say so. Daniel's voice goes thin. Emma, please, tell me where she went. I won't. Not unless she wants you to know where she is, Emma says, but I will tell you this. She's booked short-term housing and she's scheduled an appointment with an advisor. You need to know that this wasn't impulsive. She prepared. Hearing that makes Daniel's chest clench in a different way. The panic becomes urgency. Urgency becomes shame. He hears the exact words Emma used and understands that each word tilts toward a truth he had not fully faced. Maya had planned her exit. He hangs up and runs. Outside, Maya has sat down on the curb by the mailbox. The small suitcase is beside her. She folds her hands and looks at the street lamps just coming on. Her jaw is set. The betrayal inside her has shifted. Doubt became resolution, and resolution settled like a steady bench under her feet. She checks her phone and sees a string of missed calls from Daniel. She does not answer. A neighbor's dog barks. An evening bus coughs down the road. These small noises happen around the human drama like a frame that does not move. Maya notices those things because she needs to keep her balance. Sarah, a friend from the neighborhood cafe, appears and sits next to Maya without standing or speaking first. She puts her bag on the curb and offers a paper cup of coffee. Maya, Sarah says, talk to me. Tell me one thing I can do. Maya takes the coffee and unfolds a corner of the folded note she left. Tell Emma I made plans. Tell her I need time. Tell her I will be all right. Sarah blinks. You can't go without telling Daniel why. Maya looks at her. He knows why. He left it on the table. He saw it and still came in that evening like nothing had happened. He took the ring to work. Daniel did. He promised to be here and wasn't. I've been making the small repairs alone for years. I can't do that anymore. Sarah listens. She lets the silence collect between them. When she speaks, her voice is neither judge nor cheerleader. Just a friend making a small offering. You did this with care. Maya, you packed a bag. You have a plan. That's smart. Meanwhile, Daniel races to Maya's workplace. He bursts into the small office break room where Claire, Maya's manager, is clearing 2 ceramic mugs. The room smells faintly of baked bread from a nearby shop and of strong coffee. Daniel's arrival is abrupt. Claire looks up, surprised. Claire, Daniel says, is Maya here? I need to know. She's left something at home. Please. Claire's face holds a careful neutrality. She has seen personal fights cross into the office for Daniel. She left early. She took a coat. She left a folded note. She looked tired. She felt unseen. Daniel grabs the coat on the chair and finds a small opened envelope in the pocket. He peels out a printed confirmation for short-term housing and a 1-line appointment with an advisor. The paper is ordinary, professional, and quietly final. He reads it and his fingers go numb. Claire, did she say anything else? Daniel asks. Claire shakes her head. She for privacy. She meant to tell you she needed time. Does it reveal Maya's planned arrangements? Lands in Daniel like a storm he did not see coming. It is the twist that resets his understanding. This was not an angry, flung decision. This was deliberate. He had not left a chance to repair, because she had protected herself until she could leave. Emma meets Daniel at her kitchen table with the printed confirmation folded between her fingers. Her expression is practical. You can see this, Daniel. She booked a room for 2 weeks and an appointment with a counselor. She planned this. You must accept that, Daniel says. She didn't leave a note that told me to fix things. She left a note that said, stay away, Emma, I can change. I will change. Emma studies him. Prove it, not with words. Prove it by the schedule you keep, by the meals you make, by showing up when she asks you to. And start now. Call Claire and change your hours if you can. They argue in quick bursts, 3 lines that bounce like a volley. Emma, I can't. You can if you choose to. You're not in my position. I'm in the position of someone who loves Maya and won't let you excuse being absent any longer. That argument leaves Daniel hollowed out and oddly focused. He hears the edge in Emma's voice and recognizes practical steps rather than pleading will be needed. He races out again. The dusk thickens into a blue that softens the edges of the street. Daniel sees Maya across from a bus stop leaning against a pole, the suitcase at her feet. He approaches slowly because he knows he must not frighten her. He keeps his hands where she can see them and stops a breath away. Maya, he says, please. Talk to me. Tell me what I need to do. Maya looks at him. She does not blink away. She says, you need to listen without defending. You need to sit with what I say and let it land. You need to know when I'm invisible and do something before I leave the room. Daniel swallows. I see it now. I see the ring. I saw it on the table and I thought it was an accident. I thought you'd come running back. I thought I had time. Maya's mouth tightens. You had time. You spent it at your desk and in meetings and in small excuses. The time we had together was full of moments you handed away. Daniel's hands tremble. He reaches for her and she does not step back, but she does not take his hand either. The city lights lean in and their faces collect detail. The faint scar above his eyebrow, the small birthmark at Maya's temple. These things used to be ordinary. Now they mark the ground where choices are measured. Daniel, she says, I am not asking for forever tonight. I am asking for evidence. If you want to change, show me this week. Be where you said you'd be. Answer when I call. Sit down with the counselor if she suggests it. Stop waiting till later. Daniel hears the list and nods. His voice is a thread. I will do those things. I promise. Maya studies him for a long beat and then says, promises are why I'm leaving. Daniel, I need to see you do them without my prodding. If you can do that, then come find me, not before. She bends and picks up the suitcase. Daniel lunges forward and grabs the handle too fast. Maya, don't go, she pulls. Daniel, let go. A neighbor steps out onto their porch to watch. A bus brakes with a metallic breath. Daniel's knees give and he sinks down onto the curb. The moment breaks as Emma arrives and holds a paper cup of something warm in her hands. She kneels beside him without patronizing. She hands him the cup as if handing him a small practical tool. What will you do now, Daniel? Emma asks, naming a question he can no longer answer with gestures. He looks at her and at the suitcases moving away down the street. He tries to list steps aloud like a promise that can be verified. I'll change my hours. I will see Claire today and ask about flexible time. I'll call the counselor the minute she suggests a name. Emma cuts him off. Start with one thing. Name the first concrete thing you'll do tomorrow at 9. Be precise. Daniel breathes and says, I'll be home for dinner at 6. I'll put my phone on silent and leave it in the hall. I'll sit with Maya and listen. Emma looks at him and then at the street where Maya disappears into the gloaming. Then do it. Don't make a dramatic speech. Do it while the world thinks nothing has happened. Daniel nods. He folds his hands. He lets his apology be small and ordinary. He does not shout after Maya. He does not chase with grand gestures. Instead, he names a schedule and a set of actions and lays them down like measured steps. Maya waits at the regional train platform later that night. The ring is tucked inside the lining of her bag. She sends a short message to Emma that reads, 2 weeks. I need time. I'm okay. Keep me posted. She puts the phone away and stands to watch the train approach. Her breathing is steady. The betrayal that started as a sharp stone has softened into a bruise that will take time. She does not expect immediate healing. She only expects honest work. The train arrives with a metallic sigh and she steps forward, suitcase in hand, and boards the carriage, leaving the platform lights behind and the quiet evidence of her choice where Daniel had once seen a ring and sat down in stunned silence. The kitchen decision. A hard knock rattled Mrs. Alvarez's thin front door as Maya sat with a gold ring between her palms and a packed suitcase at her feet. Betrayal sat in Maya's mouth like grit. She let it taste the air and kept her hands folded over the band. The kitchen clock ticked loud above the sink. Mrs. Alvarez moved to the door, then stopped because the knock returned, louder, urgent. Daniel's shoulder hit the frame and he shoved the door open. Maya, Daniel, breath quick, voice raw in the small kitchen. He saw the ring and the suitcase before he spoke another word. His eyes found the band and the folded note on the white table. Panic stiffened his hands. Maya did not stand. She kept her chin level and the ring between both palms like something fragile and final. Betrayal had been building for months, she had written, but she only let the word pass once aloud so it would not be mistaken for whim. Betrayal, she said to the room, and the name landed on the table with the note. Daniel stepped inside and shut the door with his shoulder. Maya, wait. Maya, please. He reached for the chair and sat without meaning to, fingers pressed into the wood. He looked at Mrs. Alvarez as if asking permission to explain. Mrs. Alvarez did not move. Her hands stayed folded over the dish towel. The first shift came as silence shortened into bargaining. Daniel's voice dropped to a level meant to rebuild what he had cracked. I can change my schedule. I can stop taking late calls. He rubbed the bridge of his nose the way he did when he tried to steady himself at work. Maya's eyes did not move. You that last month, Daniel. Her voice was steady. Her hands tapped the ring once, a quick, controlled sound like a metronome. The ring clicked on wood. That single tap made what Daniel sound smaller. An exchange started and the room filled with names and examples. You left at 6 the night of my mother's birthday. Maya, you missed the dentist appointment for Hannah. Rachel, who had followed Maya, now stood at the doorway, did not wait to be asked. You didn't come to the meeting with the school. Daniel, Rachel. You heard it could be 1 more week, and it never was 1 more week. The second emotion shift landed. From betrayal into focused anger at particulars. Daniel flinched under the list. Rachel, that's not the point. He stood too fast. Maya, I was trying to build something for us. I work long hours so we can breathe easier later. His words were the same ones he'd said in earlier fights. They had softened rooms before. Now they sounded thin. Rachel stepped forward. You were always building a future that left her present for scraps. She set her bag on the counter. Maya, did you show him the note? Maya pushed the note across the table with 2 fingers. The paper slid to Daniel's hands. He unfolded it with a trimmer. The third external event the note read aloud transformed vague resentment into undeniable evidence. He read the lines. The missed anniversaries written as dates and times, the quiet anger catalogued in small specific losses. September 4th, dinner cancelled. November 12th, road trip left to go to headquarters. Each sentence pinned him with facts. Daniel's mouth moved without forming a plan. Maya, that's not how I meant it. I didn't realize I didn't. He caught himself, then tried again. I can quit the night shifts. I'll call her. I'll get counseling. Anything. His offers came out in quick jag pieces. Mrs. Alvarez folded her hands tighter. Promises are words, Daniel. We need action, not promises. She looked at Maya with an old woman's clarity. You did not take this lightly, Nia. You left him the ring. Her voice carried the neighbor's unspoken rule. Dignity is a slow thing. It does not come back when begged. Daniel's next move was to bargain with conditions, and that cycle pushed the scene into a deeper conflict. He proposed a list. Resign, change shifts, family counseling, weekends free. Rachel answered each with a single question, testing him when she asked next week, next month. When will we see the proof? She did not raise her voice, but she did not let him finish. Now, Daniel, I can start now. He reached for his phone on the table and fumbled to unlock it. His hands were clumsy. He scrolled as if the right message, the right click, could reattach what had been pulled apart. Maya watched him with the calm of someone who had rehearsed leaving for months. The emotion that had guided her from the first box packed to the ring left on the table remained clear. She aimed to reclaim herself, not to punish him theatrically. Her hands folded over the ring again and then opened. Daniel, she said, this isn't about proof in a week. It's about years of being an arrangement of convenience. The sentence landed like a stone that made the table ring. The room tightened. The fourth external event occurred when Rachel pushed forward with a revelation that cut clean through Daniel's plans. Maya accepted a job in Seattle. She's already filled the paperwork. She has train tickets. The words hit Daniel like cold water. He looked at Maya and then at Rachel, and for a second his face went blank. What? Daniel's voice ran thin. Maya, you didn't tell me. He stood frozen between pleading and accusation. When did you? Who told you? Rachel answered with a clipped patience. She, me, this morning. She, me, to come with her because she knew she couldn't do it alone. She did the forms 2 weeks ago. Her eyes did not leave Daniel's face. We have contact at the firm. There are emails. There is a start date. This isn't a bluff. The revelation was concrete. Signed papers, dates, tickets. This was the mid-chapter mini cliffhanger. For a breath, the scene stopped on the edge of a possibility. Daniel could still stop her at the porch, grab for his old life and demand another chance, or he could accept the reality that Maya had chosen a different path. He lunged for action instead of resignation. Maya, please tell me you won't go. Tell me we'll fix this. His hands found the ring and then withdrew as if the metal burned. Maya's response was not a speech. She stood slowly. Her movements were unadorned and full of purpose. She tapped the ring twice on the table, a soft sound that called attention to the tiny object and nothing else. I will not stay because it is easier for you. She said, I will not stay because you promised something you will forget next month. Her voice did not break. The steel had been built from months of small, decisive acts. Rapid dialogue followed, 3 short exchanges that pushed the argument into public accountability. Maya, you can't go. You left me out of decisions for years. I never left you out of anything on purpose. You stopped translating your days into our days. I didn't know I was doing that. You didn't ask. Each line was short. Names were used to keep responsibility clear. Mrs. Alvarez moved to the window and watched the lawn. She cleared her throat. Maya, money is not the whole of marriage. Her line was not an accusation. It was a neighbor's truth. You deserve someone who sees you every day, Naya. The sentence landed differently than Rachel's specifics. It offered a different kind of judgment that weighed on Daniel's chest. Daniel's first real breakdown came when he crouched and put his elbows on his knees. He covered his face with his hands and let a sound come out that was neither a sob nor a controlled breath. The shift into grief was immediate and physical. His shoulders trembled. His voice grew thin. I thought I was doing right by us, he said through his fingers. Maya watched him for a long moment. She walked to the kettle, filled it, and set it on the stove. The kettle's hiss became a small, domestic punctuation that pulled the room back to ordinary tasks. She poured 2 cups of tea precisely, stacked them on a saucer, and set them between the 3 of them. The movement was not tenderness. It was the smallest possible civility. Daniel pushed himself up and reached for the ring again. Maya, if I sign up for counseling, if I hand in my resignation, would you consider? He stopped as Rachel cut in, firm and unsentimental. Don't bargain with her like a contract negotiation, Daniel. Rachel, bargaining isn't the point if you treat her time like a resource to be scheduled. Did you ever ask how she felt about your absences? He swallowed. I thought dates and weekends would come back around. I thought the projects would end. He looked at Maya. I thought you'd be there when I was done. Maya set her cup down and touched the edge of the ring with one fingertip. You were building something for us. But you made me invisible while you did it. Her words named the exact harms. Missed birthdays, unread messages left unread, small kindnesses denied until they were demanded. She did not say, forgive, or he will stay. She listed consequences. The next external event came when Daniel walked to the back door and opened it, stepping onto the small porch as dusk turned the street to a thin blue. He did not ask to follow or to speak, he simply needed air. Mrs. Alvarez followed him outside and stood close but not interfering. Rachel crossed her arms and watched like someone waiting to see if a wound would be stitched or left to scar. On the porch, Daniel spoke without looking at anyone. Why didn't you tell me you had the forms? Why didn't you say you were leaving? His voice was lower now, steadier. The fourth emotion shift began as his grief edged into clarity. The clarity did not absolve him, it made a ledger of hurts. Rachel answered plainly, because you would have convinced her to wait. You would have promised a plan. She would have given you another year. She stepped closer and put a hand on Maya's shoulder. She didn't want another year of waiting for him to come home to us. She wanted to go where someone would schedule her life as a priority, not as an afterthought. Daniel's chest rose and fell. He set his hands on the porch rail and tried to force his breath to match thought. I can start therapy tomorrow. I will stop the night calls. I'll sell the car if I have to. His words were tangible. He named actions. They were also too late to stop the next reveal. Rachel's face softened for a second but then hardened. It's not only about sessions, Daniel. You have to show up every day, not only when it's convenient. She looked him in the face. Do you understand that? He nodded, a slow, fragile motion. I do. The admission was small and heavy at once. Inside, the kitchen light threw a warm disk. Maya stood by the window with the ring balanced on her palm. The kettle's steam had stopped. The next external event shifted the chapter into the irreversible. Rachel handed Maya an envelope with train tickets clipped to the top. The train leaves at 7:15 on Friday. Rachel. They already booked you a room for the interview the next morning. The forms are filed under Collins. Maya Collins. Daniel moved as if the train could be stopped. He stepped forward and reached for her arm. Maya did not recoil. She freed her arm smoothly and put her small suitcase beside the chair. Daniel, she said, this isn't about forcing you to beg. This is about me choosing a life where my presence matters. I am not walking away to punish you. I am walking to see if there is a life that asks for me back as a first thing, not an afterthought. Her words were an explanation and a boundary. A short, sharp exchange followed on the kitchen floor. Maya, tell me you won't go. Daniel, this is my chance to have a job that notices me. You could have told me you didn't ask. 6 sentences moved faster than the room could breathe. Names kept firing so no one could dodge accountability. Then the climax chapter beat arrived. It happened in a few precise movements. Maya stood, folded the note and laid the ring flat on the table, then tapped it twice with 2 fingers. The sound was small and definite. She picked up her suitcase, slung the strap over her shoulder without looking back, and walked to the front door. Daniel lunged forward, voice breaking as he reached with both hands. Maya, please, come back. His words cut off when she crossed the threshold. Maya paused at the door only long enough to meet his eyes. She did not plead. She did not promise. She one sentence and then left. I will not be your convenience anymore. Daniel. She stepped out into the evening and walked down the path with Rachel beside her. The decisive act completed itself in movement, coat zipped, suitcase rolling, a neighbor in the doorway watching. Daniel collapsed into the chair and pressed his face into his palms. The collapse was physical and final for that moment. He sat with the note open on his knee and the ring untouched beside it. The house felt strangely large. The ring glinted in the kitchen light like a tiny island. Outside, the street swallowed the sound of tires as Rachel's car pulled away. Mrs. Alvarez closed the front door gently and then turned to watch Daniel through the glass. Her expression was quiet and not unkind. She held a neighbor's verdict and left the rest to time. 2 weeks later, the scene's aftermath unfolded in parallel. Daniel sat in a counselor's waiting room with intake forms on the table. He set his wedding band into a small cardboard box at his feet and signed the first form with a hand that trembled only a little. The counselor called his name. He stood and walked into the office, the ring in the box like the first. Awkward payment for a long, messy reckoning. Maya watched a sunrise from a train window and felt something tighten into steadiness behind her ribs. She looked at the city that would be her new workplace and at the list of tasks she had arranged for the week. She opened the email from her and read her official start date. The feeling that replaced betrayal was not triumph. It was a careful, rented steadiness that came from putting one foot in front of the other. A surprising reveal shifted understanding of a small earlier event. Alvarez had known more than anyone suspected. She had seen the late nights Daniel worked and the small, quiet relief Maya used to fake when he finally came home. She had quietly taken Maya to the clinic months earlier and paid for a small sewing repair on a sweater Maya loved when Maya could not find the time. Mrs. Alvarez's choices had nudged Maya toward this step. The neighbor's interventions were small but decisive. A phone call, a cooling place to think, a witness when a woman left. Daniel's first counseling session did not fix anything. He had to put words to small harms he had barely allowed himself to see. Dinners missed, phone calls ignored, promises deferred. The counselor asked him to list 2 concrete actions he would take in the next week and 2 he would take in the next month. He wrote them down with a hand that steadied as he moved. After Daniel left for the counselor, he returned to the kitchen and handled the ring finally. He did not put it on. He held it to the light and thought of every time he had brushed her hair as she slept, every holiday he had missed. Every excuse that had sounded plausible when said in corridors between meetings. He placed the ring in the small wooden box and set it on the mantel beside a photo of a younger Maya smiling at a picnic. He could not pretend that a single object would fix what had been allowed to fray. Maya's new life began with small practicalities. She slept in a room rented for the short term and cooked scrambled eggs in a pan that had seen other hands. She signed her new contract in a clean office with her manager who gave her a welcome packet. The work was not dramatic. It was a steady string of tasks that asked her to be present. Her phone lit up with email confirmations and a message from Rachel, get coffee when you can. The message was short and ordinary and felt like a rope tied back to what was still hers. Daniel made the next concrete choice himself. He sold the commuter car he used for the night project and reduced his hours by negotiation. He began attending a group session and took notes when the counselor asked for examples of behavior he would change. At night, he sat at the kitchen table and wrote a list of the small things he would do. Call before leaving late, put his phone away at dinner, take a Saturday every month for family time. The lists were humble, they were also actions. The final moments of the chapter returned to a single concrete beat. Maya stood on a commuter platform and watched the sun lift above a city that would not know her past in the same way her old neighborhood did. She folded the last receipt from the train into her wallet and felt a narrow steadiness that had nothing to do with triumph. She texted Rachel, "I'm here, coffee soon." 2 circles of life continued, Daniel in his counseling office, Maya in a small rented room across a river. Each took actions that matched the words they'd said on a kitchen afternoon. Back on the porch of a house that had held a marriage for a decade, Daniel found the note where Maya had left it. He unfolded again and read the dated list. He whispered her name into the late night air and then closed the door behind him. His first true payment for the damage was not a dramatic sign or a public apology, it was a succession of small, steady choices. Forms signed, appointments kept, the ring boxed, and then neither worn nor hidden. He had begun the work of making presence habitual. Mrs. Alvarez visited the mailbox next door and looked toward the street where Rachel and Maya had driven away. She shook her head once and then walked back inside. She left an extra lemon tart on the kitchen counter for Daniel with a note that said, "Please learn to be here." Her words were simple and neighborly and put a small demand into the space between them. The chapter closed on a physical, situational beat. Daniel rose from the porch chair and walked to the street. He did not chase a car. He walked instead to the counseling center down the block and handed over the ring in a small box to the therapist's intake assistant, asking them to add it to his file as a reminder. Maya, meanwhile, stepped from the shelter at the commuter station and pulled her coat tighter against a wind that smelled of the sea. She walked toward a crosswalk and the city beyond it, suitcase in hand and a train ticket folded into her wallet. The door to the counselor's office closed behind Daniel and the train doors hissed shut in front of Maya. The house remained with its light on in the kitchen, the ring gone from the table and the note folded in a small drawer. The small practical acts each of them had chosen set new rhythms into motion.